Hi guys, this is Dipanshu. Welcome to my YouTube channel Cross Eduquare. In this lecture, we will discuss motion in two dimension. So for this, let us consider a two-dimensional plane, xy plane. Let us consider a particle at origin 0, 0. Now this particle is changing its position and moving in this direction. Okay. Let us consider at time t its coordinates. Let x, y. So let us see the particle has covered some displacement in y direction, this is y, and also simultaneously in x direction, this is x. So this is motion in two dimension, and this motion is in straight line. Okay, now also particle can move in this direction in curved path. In curved path also, let us consider at time t its coordinates x, y. Also here it is traveling in y direction, also in x direction. Okay, so this is motion in two dimension in curved path. So projectile motion is nothing but when motion in two dimension and it is in curved path. Okay, so now let us consider a ground in which a football is resting on ground. Now a football player comes and it imparts a velocity u to the football at an angle theta naught with horizontal. Okay, so this initial velocity u can be broken down into two components, ux I cap, so ux is horizontal velocity, plus uy j cap, uy is vertical velocity. Okay, now what about acceleration? Acceleration is first in y direction and second in x direction. Now in y direction, acceleration is nothing but acceleration due to gravity. So ay is equal to minus g, which is acting downward. Okay, and in x direction, acceleration is equal to 0 because there is no gravity acting, but it is assumed to be 0 because we are assuming there is no air resistance, okay, in x direction. Okay, this means that there are no winds moving in x direction. Okay, so acceleration vector is 0 minus g j cap. Okay, now you can see that projectile motion is nothing but combination of motion in two dimension, first in y dimension and second in x dimension. So how the motion is in y dimension? So it is like this: a football is having initial velocity uy, so that it will move in y direction like this. Okay, and it will return to the ground like this after reaching a maximum height h. Okay, now you can see that in y direction there is acceleration minus g. Okay, due to this the velocity is decreasing. Okay, so at a particular instant of time t, velocity is, let us say, v by t. Okay, so v by t is nothing but uy minus gt. Okay, so this is motion in y direction. Now what about motion in x direction? Motion in x direction is like this. This is football, it is having initial velocity ux. Okay, this initial velocity ux. Okay, so this ux is constant. Okay, so this is constant like this. So here ux, here also ux, here also ux. Okay, so at time t, this is time t, velocity in x direction at time t is nothing but ux because acceleration is equal to 0. Okay, now we have seen velocity in x direction at time t is ux, which is constant, and velocity at time t in y direction is nothing but uy minus gt. Okay. Now, what is the trajectory of the football? Okay, this football, it wants to move up continuously due to this initial velocity, okay, uy, but due to some horizontal velocity initial ux, it will move in x direction. So this lead to this path, okay. So let us assume a time t, okay. So the ball at time t is here. So at time t, velocity in x direction would be remain same, which is initial velocity, that is in x direction ux is equal to vxt. Okay. Now what would be the velocity in y direction at time t is nothing but uy minus gt. And what about resultant? Resultant is nothing but vt. So vt is nothing but x direction velocity is same as initial, which is ux, which is nothing but ux I cap plus vy t j cap. Okay, and this resultant velocity vector is making angle theta t with respect to vertical. So theta t is nothing but tan inverse vyt upon ux. Okay, so we have find out velocity in x direction at time t and velocity in y direction at time t, also resultant velocity vector. Okay, now displacement in x and y direction. For displacement in x direction, let us take equation of motion. Second equation of motion in x direction is x is equal to uxt plus half axt square. Since ax is equal to 0, so displacement in x direction is nothing but ux into t. Now displacement in y direction is nothing but y is equal to uyt plus half ayt square. So y is equal to uyt minus half gt square. Okay. Now applying third equation of motion, which is nothing but v square is equal to u square minus plus 2as. Now in x direction, what is the final velocity? Means velocity after time t is nothing but same as initial velocity. So v is nothing but ux square is equal to ux square. Okay, and a is equal to 0. Okay. In y direction, what would be the third equation of motion? Is nothing but vy t square is equal to uy square minus 2g into y. Okay, where y is displacement in y direction. Okay.